I'll start with Supervisor Tryon.
I have a COG meeting tomorrow evening. That completes my report.
Mr. Walensky.
I have nothing to report, and that completes my report.
I have nothing to report, Madam Chair, and that completes my report.
I'll go quick, and then I'll let Mr. Thomas. I have Council of Governments. I have Greater Arnold Business Association. Mr. Thomas.
Okay, yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity to make a couple of requests to the board. I had an opportunity to talk last week with Supervisor Tryon, and there's something that I wanted to bring back to the board today just for general discussion, and maybe we can have some discussion before my term ends on the issue of the transient occupancy tax. Supervisor Tryon and I had a lengthy discussion on this, and I recognize that in past years he has expressed his vehement opposition to increasing the transient occupancy tax. I think we worked out a what might be a compromise. Tom, you can characterize it if you want, but I sort of put it in terms that I thought that would resonate with him, that he has been our representative to the RCRC organization, and he frequently comes back from meetings there where he reports back that they have supported a position or they've opposed a position, but what resonated with me is they often take no position. So I asked Supervisor Tryon if I wanted to propose that the board put the this issue of the transient occupancy tax, raising it from 6 to 10% on the future election. Would you, Tom, oppose it again? And I think that he said that no, that he would take, like RCRC, a neutral position on it. And with that, I think that we conceivably could get our transient occupancy tax raised up to a reasonable level and do some good things for the economy of Calaveras County in the process. So with that brief explanation, I just wanted to propose that, to agendize that for some time before the end of the year so that we can get it. The next, as talking with Karen Varney. Is Karen here? She said that it seems that the first available election for this purpose would be in June of 2012. So that's about 18 months from now, and I really would hope that we could come to some resolution about our willingness to take that on as a board and put our energies toward it. Okay, that's one thing. I will be submitting some replacement or advertising for some replacement people on the CSA 1 Road Committee. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of people that are terming out, and they have expressed a lack of desire to continue on that committee. So that'll be coming back before the end of the year, hopefully. Okay, finally, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on 4 years of hard work and about 10 months of campaigning. Maybe I should feel more noble and magnanimous, but considering the way that this campaign has been conducted, I don't think anyone could logically expect me to be. For the most part, my sentiments have previously been expressed by writers and editorial staffs of every legitimate news source in Calaveras County. Therefore, anyone who would criticize me for my comments today, if they look closely at the record, they'll see that my statements are accurate and true. The 2010 race for District 5 Supervisor has been described as the most negative in Calaveras County history, and I would agree. I don't think it bodes well for future campaigns. My objective through the campaign was to ask voters to look very closely to compare my experience, background, and achievements to those of my opponent. I wanted to talk about specific issues and opportunities facing District 5, but somehow we never got to that. My opponent's seemingly more successful campaign tactic has been based exclusively on misinformation and outrageous personal attacks on my character, my reputation, and my integrity. But I'm not the only one that he has attacked. Remember that he's also been very critical of the performance of this board. Incredibly, much of this outrageous behavior has been captured on the tapes of our board meetings, but it didn't seem to matter. Maybe it's because we're constantly surrounded by the Glenn Beck shock value style of politics, but it surprises me and it disappoints me that this in-your-face style of politics has achieved a victory here. To my fellow board members, I wish you to know that I've enjoyed working with you. I'll miss you, and I wish you good luck. So thank you for that
Mr.
opportunity.
Thomas. Ms. Boyce, do you have any comments?
Nothing to report today.
Mr. Jones?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. This closes the regular agenda, and we will go into our study session. I just want to do some housekeeping on the study session. The issue before us, the timelines and the budget, is a progress report on the general plan. We will not be discussing the elements or any portion thereof or the details of the general plan. That will be done when we have something to report out on that, and it will also be done in a public process. Today is just a progress report of where we are and where we're going. I will ask staff to go through their presentation. I will ask the board if they have any questions or comments. I will open it up to the public. How many people in here want to comment on the timeline and the budget, on just what's on the agenda? Okay. I might. That's fine. That's a might's an okay. I'll be a might. Lots of mights going up. I'm going to be restricting it to 5 minutes per person for your comments, and I'm asking that you stay on the subject that's before us. Any questions that you have will be taken down by staff, and they will be addressed at the end of the public comment period. Again, to the items just on the agenda. And then I'll bring it back to the board if they have any comments or clarification they would like of staff as we go forward. The board has requested this study session. We have requested an update on where we are and where it is that we're going on a quarterly basis. It might or might not be in a public comment like today, but it will be on the website for the planning department. Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you indicated, this is intended to be a discussion of a status report for the general plan update process. In your packets, you've received what I consider to be a fairly detailed summary of kind of where we've been, where we are right now, and what sort of tasks we're working on at the present time, and what sort of work still needs to be completed. This report format, as you had indicated, is hopefully going to be the format that we use moving forward to provide periodic updates to the board, at least quarterly, and I would say at times on a more frequent interval. And as you said, there may be times where we would recommend that we have another discussion like this, and other times where we will just be submitting a written report to you and to the public for your information. The report was also posted on our website. We also sent out a notification to everyone on our email list as to the fact that this meeting was taking place, and provided a link to the report itself. So hopefully today's turnout is an indication that people got the news. We would appreciate any input you have on the format of the report, because we are going to be providing these to you periodically, particularly in regard to how the information is presented or any information that's missing that you might want to see from future reports. We'll certainly be very interested in getting that input and that input from the public for that matter. In a moment, I'm going to turn the proceeding over to Brenda Gilardi, our General Plan Coordinator. She's going to do a very brief PowerPoint presentation that just touches on the main points covered in the summary itself, and then, as you indicated, we'll be available to answer questions that you and the public might have. I'm also joined by Dave Pastizo, who is our in-house GIS specialist working on the general plan, and he's here to answer any technical questions that the board might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda, for the record, could you introduce yourself and
yes.
what your role is here? Thank you.
I'm Brenda Gilardi, General Plan Coordinator for Calaveras County. So I'd like to just start with a brief overview that shows the 9 major phases to the general plan update. And the areas in gray is where we've been. The areas in green is where we're going. And the first part of the process basically focused on what is. So it did a lot of research into background data on Calaveras County that resulted in a baseline report. And then also what could be in terms of community visions. And there were a series of outreach meetings where individuals were asked what they liked about their community, what they thought the challenges were, and that data and input was all summarized in a report called Visions, Issues, and Opportunities. So part 2 of the process, which is the areas in green, we're going to be focusing on actually producing the plan. So based on the input and the baseline data, we'll be formulating goals, policies, and programs, and also preparing an EIR. And as in the first phase, there'll be ample opportunity for public input in these next phases. As you know, a key priority of this entire process is public outreach. As evidence of that, to date, we've had 21 community meetings and 5 board of supervisor meetings or study sessions. And this theme will continue through to the end of the general plan process. And I would like to emphasize also that the general plan update process is a fluid process. While we will be producing goal, policy, and program statements, everything is draft. And it's all subject to change until the board takes action and adopts the general plan. So just to let you know what we've been hard at work at recently and currently, to date we've completed the community map conversion process. This was translating the community plan maps to our new general plan land use designations. We then took those maps out to the community in a series of 16 meetings to verify that we had done the translations correctly and to make any adjustments where those needed to be done. We also provided support services to the Valley Springs community plan process. That was an unanticipated involvement, which did require a substantial amount of staff time. We also spent time collaborating with the Ag Coalition and the other resource groups to come up with new resource land use designations that I think work much better for the county as we move forward. And finally, we completed the youth plan modeling, which is the basis for the transportation circulation and EIR analysis. Currently underway, we are in the process of reformatting the community plans. As we talked about, the community plans have been a separate effort that staff has not been involved in. There was a desire to make sure that those community plans had a consistent format, that the policies and programs in those plans were clear and easily to understand and implement, and also that there would not be redundancy or repetition with policies in the general plans. We're in the process of reformatting those, and we will be doing another series of community meetings to go over our recommendations for the reformatting. And we're also beginning our internal review of administrative draft elements, so that process in terms of formulating the general plan elements is underway. What we'll be involved with over the next couple of months is we'll be completing this reformatting process. As I indicated, we're going to be having probably about 14 meetings with individual working groups from the communities. As you can imagine, this represents a substantial effort on staff's part. We'll be continuing to review the draft elements. We're going to be holding a study session on water that is tentatively scheduled for December 7th before the board, and talking about the relationship of water, land use, and land use development patterns. We're also in the process of designing and implementing a formal process for the land use map change request. This was a task requested of staff that was not in the original scope. And the idea is to release this prior to the EIR. And I talk a little bit about this in my staff report in terms of potential time implications. And if we do it the way it's now laid out, it could result in a pause between release of the general plan and release of the EIR of up to 3 months. So that is a possible timeline impact, and we'll talk a little bit more about timeline impacts in a moment. There are alternatives to doing that in terms of soliciting requests for land use map changes, and we can talk about that in our discussion. And lastly, during these next couple of months, we'll be preparing and releasing the notice of preparation for the EIR. And that when that is released, it will trigger a 30-day review period. So this lays out the timeline. Basically, it's about 11 months, the way things are laid out now, to adoption. I'll just touch on a couple of major milestones. In March, we anticipate releasing the general plan, the draft general plan, for public comment. And at the same time, we would release the map appeal process, and that would start a 30-day window for that. In April and May, we would be dealing with the land use map appeal process in terms of receiving requests, evaluating those requests, preparing reports where necessary, and if warranted, we may need to bring some of those requests to the board for determination. In June, we would anticipate release of the general plan EIR, and then start hearings on the general plan and EIR. And in July through September, those months would mostly be taken up with public hearings, receiving comments, doing whatever research would be required as a result of those, and responding formally to comments on the EIR and preparing the final EIR. And finally, we get to the adoption hearings, where action is taken to certify the EIR and adopt the general plan. So this may look like the end of the process. However, it's in some ways actually the beginning, because a plan is just a plan unless you implement it. And so following adoption of the general plan, staff will immediately begin undertaking tasks to start that implementation process. And the first of those is going to be rezoning parcels so that zoning is consistent with land use. That is a requirement of state law, and it will be an opportunity for us to correct existing inconsistencies, of which there are more than one. So that will be the first undertaking. Commensurate with that, we will be looking at Title 17 of the Municipal Code, which is the zoning code. There are certain general plan programs that require updates to that. For example, one is to specify zoning districts where transitional housing facilities can be located. So there's those sorts of zoning updates, and then there's a larger update in terms of bringing the code up to date to address current conditions that maybe didn't exist when the last updates occurred. And that would be a more comprehensive update. If we are awarded the property before monies, we would be able to do that, do the update in a comprehensive fashion. But if we are not, then it's likely to occur maybe on a more segmented approach based on priorities set by the board. Another item that we'll be doing is creating a general plan implementation matrix, which will take all of the programs in the general plan and put them in a matrix, and it will list all of the responsible departments, and attached to each program is a date that it should be completed by. And so this will become like our department's to-do list in terms of what tasks are, what programs are the responsibility of what department. And it can also be used as a tool by the board when you do your budget priority setting. And so you can use this matrix to help determine what are your priorities for staff to accomplish tasks within the next year. So as we've gone through this process, there have been a number of timeline challenges. It's not out of the ordinary for delays to happen on a general plan update. It's a huge undertaking and involves many, many different tasks. Some of the delays that have been experienced in this process, some of them have been due to the past changeovers in staff. Luckily, we're past that now. We have a very solid team working on this. Some tasks have taken much more time than anticipated. Some of those were the land use translation process. That process took more than we thought. And also the involvement with the Valley Springs community plan process. In the future, we could see other tasks taking more time than anticipated. That would include the reformatting, community plan reformatting process, this land use map appeal process, which I spoke to a little bit earlier. There could be a need for additional general plan, EIR, public hearings. Minter Harnish is only scoped to attend 6, and that includes 2 for adoptions. That would be 4 public hearings prior to adoption. And then there may be additional public comments on the EIR that go beyond what's scoped. In talking with the EIR consultant, they estimated that they budgeted time and money to address approximately 200 comments. Depending on the level of detail and depending on if we get more than that, that budget may not be sufficient. So there are a number of unknowns. Some we can kind of anticipate. There may be others, that we cannot. But I think it's important to be aware of those now, so that we can look to the future and plan ahead appropriately. So when there are time delays, that has budget implications. Those 2 items are directly connected. So due to the time delays that I just talked about, we have met with Minter Harnish mid this year and made some substantial budget adjustments so that we can stretch this existing budget so that we can complete the general plan within this budget. What Minter Harnish has done is voluntarily...
Brenda, could you excuse me a minute? There's some chairs over here. If there's no room in there, if you'd like to come up here.
Right over here.
Thank you, John.
You can sit right here.
You both tell me what to do.
I'm over here.
Folks, you can come right up here. There's these chairs over here, and you're welcome to sit in them.
Okay, Brenda, could you please go ahead? Thank you.
Yes. So I was saying that Minter Harnish has volunteered to reduce their hourly rates and to also absorb past and anticipated task overages. This is a very unusual effort on the part of a consultant to see a project to the finish. In my almost 30-year career as a planner, I think this is maybe the only time I've ever seen this. And I think it demonstrates a very strong commitment on the part of Minter Harnish to be with us at the finish. And then another way that we were able to adjust the budget was that staff took on tasks that were originally going to be done by Minter Harnish. And those included taking over the complete community plan process, so the reformatting and all of that. We also took over summarizing the alternatives report comments, which there were over 600 of those, and we put all of those into a report and presented that to the board in April. We were the lead on the U-Plan model calibration and modeling process, and we've also taken on any additional requests by the board for presentations. So making this adjustment allows us to finish the general plan within the budget, assuming the timeline stays as we've outlined. But there is no flexibility or ability to stretch it beyond that. So in looking down the road, we see some potential areas where there might be unanticipated costs, and we just wanted to bring those to your attention. Some of those could be rental fees or monies needed for additional meeting notifications modifications. The land use map appeal process is kind of an unknown in terms of what costs might be associated with that. If there's a request from Mintier Harnish to attend additional meetings, that's not scoped. The resolution of the Valley Springs community plan process remains an unknown. Again, as I mentioned, there might be more EIR comments than anticipated, and if there are assignment of other non-scope tasks, those would all affect the current budget. Just a couple of administrative things that we wanted to let you know about. Larry Mintier is still our principal in charge, but there has been a change in terms of who the project manager is. Formerly it was Jessica Law, who I think some of you know from the housing element process. Jessica has moved on to a new opportunity. And so we have a new project manager, Dan Amston. And he has a lot of background in rural county general plans. He's working on 2 other plans currently. And we went down and met with Larry and Dan, and we feel very confident that this transition will be seamless. In fact, it's been in effect for several months. We feel Dan is up to speed and on task and will be an asset to the process. The second item that we want to bring to your attention is due to these time delays that we talked about, the date that Mintier Harnish's contract expires is coming up at the end of this year, and so we need to extend that time. So that contract extension will be coming to the board tentatively scheduled for December 7th, and it will be only a request for time extension. That concludes my remarks, and we are available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments they'd like to make at this time?
I have some questions,
Go ahead,
if I may. Going to the second to last page, Brenda, I would like a little more discussion, I guess, on the potential unfunded costs. When we started this process, I forget what we budgeted, but I think it was better than $1 million. Is that correct? Does anybody remember what we initially budgeted?
It was about that, 1.1, I think.
1.1?
Well, yeah, I did a summary of the budget. To date, what the budget is $1,083,000.
How much?
$1,083,677.
Okay, so call it 1.1. I just want to go through these unfunded costs, because you have rental fees and meeting notifications. It seems to me that would have been incorporated in the original budget. That's not something new and different. Are we having more meetings and more notifications, and if so, why?
Well, the reason that this item was noted is that there could be a demand or a request to have meetings and larger meetings. One way that we've been able to avoid having to rent rooms for these additional community meetings is to work with smaller groups that represent the community. So we're holding them in places where either they don't charge or there is no fee, or we're making other arrangements. But, for example, the meetings that we had on the alternatives, we had to rent all of the halls and pay for that. So what I'm saying is that budget is used up, and if there were a request to have larger meetings in larger meeting spaces, there is not money in the budget to pay for the rental fees.
Okay, but I think we usually use the town hall here in San Andreas. I mean, we're not talking big dollars here. We're talking, and this must have been anticipated when we put the original budget together. I mean, notifications were basically newspaper notifications, and I guess website notification and the like. But I don't look at. Do you have any? Are you quantifying that in any way at this point?
Tom, I think the best way to respond to that is that these are potential costs. If the tasks are performed within the scope that we know today and that we've already talked about earlier today, we don't expect these additional costs.
Okay.
We're just trying to make you aware that there are always at times
You mean
additional
if the
costs.
board gets carried away on all the public
You said it, not me.
issues, that there are costs associated with that?
There are, yes.
Okay. Let's go to the second one, Mintier Harnish meeting attendance. I noticed they're not here today, and I think that's fine for just an update from staff. What level of involvement will they still are they going to possess? Because down here later, we talk about how we're assigning more responsibilities to staff and taking them away from, as I understand it, Mintier, Harnish. And it seems to me that one of the reasons for that is we don't have enough money budgeted. So maybe you would elaborate on that.
Well, as I understand it, there were a number of meetings that Minter Harnish attended that were not originally scoped. So they did that without asking for an augmentation, thinking that those costs could be absorbed elsewhere in the budget. I believe one was an additional meeting before the board. This was before my time, so I can't speak directly to it. And also I think that there were community outreach meetings that they undertook that, again, were not in the...
To make sure that we have an opportunity to address that, I'm sure that staff will take care of it, but I do want to put that on the agenda, or at least to make you aware of it. And then other clients that I'm familiar with, which invested in M4 property at Toyon, which we long thought would be the industrial commercial center for this part of Calaveras County because it has a lot of potential. I looked on the map and discovered they've become 40-acre ag, and they're really not impressed. Somebody enlightened may have thought that was a good idea, but
so, Mr. Delorto, you're saying that you support that appeals process as we go through, because those are the kinds of things you're talking will be part of the general plan community meetings. And
I support an appeal process, yes. I didn't hear it because I came in late.
Oh, that's right. You came in late. I
had an opportunity to ride in a fire engine, and I just couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
And that's all I have. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Delorto.
Mike Weetrick, Valley Springs, and Burson resident. I have a couple of things as to do with the timeline. It was brought up by a couple different people already that the timeline has gone way past what it was supposed to, and the cost has apparently done the same thing. So I would request as a taxpayer that when it comes time for you guys to do an extension, that was mentioned that the extension would only be for time, that it be written in the extension that it is strictly only for time, that there is no dollar amount to be added to it. The other thing I have an issue with, based on what I'm hearing here today, is the thing about the Valley Springs Community Plan keeps coming up. And the staff from the planning department did help us in the committee that I was part of that was put together by Supervisor Topanelli. It's my understanding that when we came to the meeting with the draft map, it was brought before this board, and this board voted 4-1 to use that as the preferred alternative. So I'm wondering why there's any issue with the two different things at this point. They've already been directed to use that map, which the written part is part of the map, because they agreed to the implementation or the use of the map and the guiding principles as outlined that were turned in with that map. So they were directed to use that map to move forward with the process of the modeling and everything else. So I'm not sure how it could possibly hold the process up, because they've already been directed by this board as to what to do.
Thank you. I just need to make one comment about we keep blaming Mintier. A lot of the changes that occurred because this Board of Supervisors requested the changes, as did the public on some of them. So I don't want to just make Mintier the scapegoat for the cost of the project. Are there any other comments or questions? There were a lot of hands that went up.
Lynn Appler, Rancho Calaveras. Just about the grant, the Caltrans Community-Based Transportation Planning Grant. The purpose of the grant program is to fund coordinated transportation and land use and a sustainable transportation system that includes mobility, access, and safety. We keep hearing about the sustainable growth, but this fund from Caltrans is for transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. I just got one quick question. I better sign it first. Yeah, I read the newspapers. I don't come up here as frequently as I have in the past, but I've got a question. This has been taking an awful long time, a few years now, on this general plan, and the bulk of it I seem to be in the heart of, down in Burson. It's very close to Valley Springs. It adjoins it, and my concerns are with this new revitalizing the community plan or the general plan to get it over and done with. I fully support. I'm really concerned. My question is the Council of Governments going to play any role in this at all in conducting any of the meetings? If so, I think we should look at it and come up with some other solution. I hope not. I hope it's the planning department that's going to be in charge. I'm through. It's...
Okay, thank you. We're going to answer all the questions at the end, Ed. Mr. Haley.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dave Haley, talking about the Copperopolis Community Plan. I'm going to speak to the budget and the timeline with the caveat that I agree with this previous gentleman that time is of the essence, and we do need to wrap this general plan up and get on with it, because there's a lot of people that have invested a lot of money with the desire to move forward. Given that premise, though, I have a concern of different directives given the different communities as they relate to the directives of staff in this today. During the process of the Copper Community Plan, which has been going on for many years, it was a build-out scenario, and the plan was presented by land uses based on a concept of about 16,000 units, 40,000 people, from the current 2,000 units and 4,000 people. So the process was presented in that fashion, deliberated, and a plan was created. As time went on, today's theory, for what I understand from staff, is it is not a build-out scenario, even though that committee did their work based on it. It's now based on a defined timeline of 2035. So we now have a defined timeline of 2035 using the Department of Finance population projection figures, of which I was told by staff, and I have it in writing. That means that there's a population increase of 20,000 people in Calaveras County from today. When you have 20,000 population increase, spread that around the county, let's just assume 25% of it goes to copper, that's 5,000 folks. 5,000 on top of the current 4,000 is 9,000. Does need not get us to 25% of the planned build-out of what was projected by the committee. Why this is of interest is when you do a physical impact analysis, which is number 8 on this chart, you'll get to infrastructure cost and needs and mitigation measures. Currently, there's a copper benefit basin program that's been paid for by the county. Now we're going to a cost analysis by Berry Economics, but the benefit basin is completed. That used a timeline 2035. When you do that, we now have 10 miles of 4-lane and 3-lane roads in the town of Copperopolis. Nowhere in our community plan was that even thought of. We all wanted country character, country roads. When you use the build-out scenario of 40,000 people, that's all you need is country roads, 2-lane. But because of an arbitrary timeline put in place, you force bigger roads because the whole plan isn't put in place. Once you get bigger roads, 10, 20 years down the line, future Board of Supervisors will say, well, now we have bigger roads, we can allow more growth. Happens time and time again. been in this business for 50 years. Happens every time. So I have a concern about meeting this timeline when different directors are given for different committees and different things, and coming up with a legitimate physical impact analysis I have a concern about. Second thing is the consolidation of land uses on the current maps that are coming out in terms of reformatting. We have different land uses going on than what came out of committees. The differences in our county, or our community, is we had 40,000 people projected based on land uses. The current one is 58,000 people based on land uses. I have a concern for organizing that. Last thing, I have a concern about allowing the appeal process. I do agree that people should have a right to appeal and be heard, but I also think that there needs to be that land use, whether it's appealed or whether it's agreed upon appeal, needs to go back to the community in the context of the community plan. You could be changing the whole character of a community based on specific lands or land uses on specific parcels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haley.
Good morning, Board. I'm Andy Ballantyne from District 5. I had a whole bunch of questions. I wanted to ask the question I saw on the thing that was displayed. They talked about reformatting the community plans, and reformatting is a word. I want to know what they're talking about when they're talking about reformatting the plan. I'd like that explained, if they would. As far as extending the Minor Harnish contract, that's fine if you're going to extend it. I just want to know, is there going to be additional money for the extension? Because that's usually the way that those things go. There's one thing that really bothers me under the community plans, and that's the fact that the consensus plan, which was done with a grant from Caltrans, we had a whole bunch of outside interest that participated in, gave information, and they put a plan together, and it was said by Caltrans that they had a right to interfere in anybody's community plans anywhere just because of the fact that they paid a gas tax. If you're going to use that same type of ideology, then, like all of us, we pay a phone tax, we pay a tax to PG&E, but that does not give us the right to tell them how to run their companies. And the other thing is, I have looked for the law that they're quoting that says because you pay a gas tax that you can come out and participate in a community plan anywhere and everywhere. I don't know what that law is. Maybe County Council.
Mr. Ballantyne, I will have the Council of Governments answer those questions. Those aren't what staff is going to be dealing with.
Because everybody has said, and it's like he said, she said, and I have not seen a law in print that says that you can do that.
I'll get in touch with you and let you know.
And I think we ought to have one. Another thing, I wanted to ask if there.
Dealing with the timeline and budget.
Am I done?
No. I just want to make sure your comments deal with the subject matter before us. Thank you.
They do. I just wanted to ask if there was a study done on the consensus plan as to the type of development pertaining to the condensing of human habitation and crime and emergency calls and providing infrastructure for high-density development. I just wanted to know if there was a study done on that, because it seems all those things increase whenever you implement that type of a plan. So
Okay.
I would suggest that everybody take a very close look at that.
Okay, that part will not be answered today, but I can have staff call you on that, your last question.
Okay, that's fair enough. I just wanted to bring it up so that
Thank you.
everybody understood.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to sign in?
Yeah, if you could, Pat, please, just makes it easier for staff to record who's here.
My name is Patricia Pereira. I'm from Campo Seco. May I approach the board with...
Yeah, could you just give it to Brenda? Brenda, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. My concern is with the budget and the potential unfunded costs. And it's in regard to, of course, the Valley Springs Community Plan. And it's in regard to the CCOG final Valley Springs Community Plan. And I'm going to refer to the Department of Transportation letter dated October 14th. In regard to fulfilling the conditions in its scope of work, CCOG did not fulfill the conditions. The consistency requirement for the Valley Springs Community Plan with the new Calaveras County General Plan update and CEQA have not been met and cannot until the Board of Supervisors have adopted the newly revised updated plan and EIR. Until that has been done, the grant requirements have not been met. In addition, the CCOG draft community plan cannot be accepted as a final document until the consistency requirement has been fulfilled. And I've shown in your written documentation there, page 10 of the Caltrans grant, states that the Calaveras County Community Development Agency is responsible for developing and maintaining the county's general plan, including its community plans. As a project partner and subrecipient, CDA will provide the services of its general plan coordinator to ensure the resulting planning document is consistent with the county's general plan requirements and process, and that the county's public participation goals for the general plan update are met. And on page 2, item 1, project description, the final product will be a community planning document consistent with the Calaveras County General Plan requirements and the California Environmental Quality Control Act. CCOG and Caltrans are violating the terms of the grant and the role of the project partner, the Calaveras County Community Development Agency, who is to ensure the document's consistency. Issue number 2, the Board of Supervisors voted on June 1st, 2010, a 4-to-1 majority vote to accept the Valley Springs Citizens Committee as the preferred map and the CCOG proposal as the alternate. As evidenced by the 3rd paragraph in the Department of Transportation letter, the supervisors' vote and the preference has been ignored. The draft community plan appendices were reviewed by our office. The department defers additional comment until such time as specific projects and plans are advanced for implementation. There appears to be some confusion and lack of notification to Caltrans as to the alternate status of the CCOG proposal. The Citizens Committee has noted the general plan consistency element within the introduction of the Valley Springs Community revised draft dated and submitted to the Board of Supervisors on September 7th, 2010. I would request the Board of Supervisors require that CCOG and Caltrans satisfy the conditions and terms of their grant as written and enforce the planning laws of the state of California. and clarify specifically that CCOG alternate position status and classification, and inform Caltrans CCOG project partners, stakeholders, and the public. Does the CCOG alternate status void the CDA consistency issue with the general plan and CEQA? I would also note that in any contract regarding this much money and the grant authors, CCOG and Calaveras County, were very negligent in not including either within the FDA contract or the grant itself a contingency clause that would protect the public if they petition, vote, and protest their disapproval on removal. Otherwise, we, the public, are held captive by money-driven grants funded by others who do not live, work, or own property within the proposed grant project area. Caltrans traps the public by requiring public participation after the grant is awarded. Predetermined decisions are made without public approval or involvement or notification. They need to apply that same public participation ethic to full public disclosure and public approval prior to and during the grant application process so that private property rights are not in jeopardy. There are many double standards throughout this project, and the public was on the short end with very little representation to the landowners and their property rights. We have all learned very valuable lessons. We are not radicals, organizations, coalitions, and nonprofits. We are ordinary people, the taxpayers, the landowners, the voters. This is our lives, our community, our future, and our investments are at stake. Thank you.
Darren Spellman, Rancho Calaveras. For the record, my wife, Jennifer Spellman, is an English teacher with a degree in English literature, so every once in a while she clues me into fancy words. The fancy word that fits the description today in terms of the negligence that's been spoken of is best described by a word that you can look up, and that's called malfeasance. The discussion at hand right now is about timeline and budget. I have it on authority from a graduate of a very respected university known throughout the world that there are about 5 to 6 very simple mandates that are required by the state for us to comply to in the general plan update. But what's been chosen is to do an all-inclusive, fabulous plan on the part of a few who have a lot of dreams and hopes about what they would make Calaveras County become in the future. I would submit to you that it's not about the dreams and hopes of a small few. It's about the individuals who own the properties, who've invested their life, their blood, sweat, and tears in equity. And if there's a reason why it's gone over budget or over time, it's for the very reason that Mr. DeLordo spoke of earlier. Why would anybody in their right mind want to take land that was zoned industrial near Toyon and turn it into ag land? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. As it also makes no sense for Mr. Coe's property on Paloma Road to be downgraded to ag land or taken away his industrial zoning. As it makes absolutely no sense that in the so-called consensus plan, which the COG put together, that via their online survey, 72% of the people said the corner of 12 and 26, where the existing Marval supermarket is, should be turned back to ag land. I would submit to you that this is malfeasance. And I would ask that the people involved in the process, please have mercy on the tax-paying citizens of this county. Get those 5 or 6 things that need to be done to make us compliant with the state handled and put this to rest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Supervisors, I'll make my comments to the budget and the time. I'm Al Segala, President of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and I echo some of the comments that are previously made. It seems that there's a relationship between complexity and budget and time. If you want more time, spend more money, make it more complex. Inversely, if you want to complete the general plan quickly, simplify it. One of the most important things, when we talk about the general plan, we're talking about police power, the extension of police power, what people can do with their property, and even their businesses to a certain extent. Our prosperity is based on freedom. People able to make decisions where to move their business, even what to do with their business, and also what to do with their property. Certainly we don't want to have incompatible uses, like the pig pen next to a hospital or something like that. But that's never really been the issue. It's important that the land use designations have the approval of the property owner, who's going to be subject to those government regulations. This seems to be the essence of the dispute between the two area plans in Valley Springs. The property rights friendly Tuffanelli plan is generally based on owner approval, and the other is not. The third one, I'm not sure. In Copperopolis, much collaboration was done between major property owners to plan and fund future improvements in transportation and recreation. This is an example of people working together in their own best interests, reflecting their property rights, that later is reflected in a general plan. This positive, friendly approach to land use decision needs to be expanded, and the complex process that we're doing, sometimes it's called smart growth, sometimes it's called Agenda 21, that needs to be put on the back burner, or better yet, discarded. The cost of mailing postcards to property owners, we have 46,000 property owners. We're not changing the land use of 46,000 property owners. I'll be really amazed if we are. We're maybe changing the land use of 10,000 people. The cost to send postcards on click-to mail, which you can use on the internet, very simple, inexpensive, use a Visa card. If there were 10,000 changes, 10,000 cards at 31 cents a card, that's complete, that's mailing everything. The cost would be $3,100. We need to notify the people whose property is going to be affected. We need to not only tell them what the change we're doing to their use of their property, but describe, at least somewhat, what that change means for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segali. Does anyone else have any comments on the timeline or the budget?
I'm Tanya Dowson from Burson. Our rights to life, liberty, and property are inherent and existed before there were laws. Laws were created to protect these rights. Laws should be nothing more than organized protection of the individual's right to self-defense. On page 91 of the board packet, it states that the staff conducted multiple follow-up meetings with individual property owners and provided written responses to requests and questions regarding land use designations on individual properties. I'd like to know, were all affected property owners contacted? And where is the documentation for these written responses? And what portions of the general plan were changed as a result of these meetings? And also, last summer, Mr. Tryon asked George White to what extent the housing element exceeded the mandates of the state. Several weeks later, he had yet to receive an answer. Was his question ever answered? And if not, why not? And if so, what was the answer? Thank you.
Again, some of these questions and comments are really good. We've asked staff to stay focused on what the agenda item is. I mean, Tanya had some good questions. Some of you had but we are asking staff to stay focused because some of the questions that you're asking will require more in-depth analysis than what we have.
And this is one of those cases where, because other tasks have kind of overtaken us, we've actually asked other members of our department to take on some of the implementation responsibilities for the housing element. But we do plan on hopefully meeting those deadlines, and we haven't forgotten about them. Colleen Platt asked a couple of questions, and maybe there were three actually. One was which map was used for the modeling, and I think I've kind of responded to that already. The map that we used was the map that the board directed us to use, which was the map that Supervisor Tofinelli's group developed. I will ask Dave to answer the question about what does this modeling look like and what does it mean in 1 second. The other question she asked was if we could provide cost estimates for an equal analysis of all the alternatives.